Today, I want to talk to you about developing your voice, asking and answering questions in several different situations. And let me explain that. A lot of times, situations arise where we're curious about something that's said, we are confused about something that's said, but we don't ask a question. And we don't ask a question because we think maybe we missed something, maybe we're just the stupidest person in the room, because that's how we talk to ourselves sometimes, or you don't want to waste people's time. You don't want to take up the space to ask your question. And I'm here to tell you that when you do that, you're playing small and you are not developing your power. You're letting an opportunity go by when you could have been developing your power. So I'm going to give you some examples of this at work. So I had many years in the corporate world, nonprofit world, consulting. I owned a children's play facility. I guess that's retail. I don't know. And there were many times when I was in a meeting and I wanted to ask a question or I wanted to make a statement, but I felt like I didn't want to take the space. I wanted the meeting to be done. I felt like maybe I was missing something. Almost every time I look back on that and I think, oh my gosh, I missed an opportunity to clarify something or to point something out. Because often what happens is conversations continue, and I could have pointed out something that was like a flaw in logic or some data that they were missing, and I didn't do it. Why? Because I was playing a little small. I was doing what I thought was preserving and protecting myself. So I didn't want to put myself out on a limb. And I was sort of observing the dynamics. Now, I use that experience today to help you get even more powerful. And I think back on the circumstances a lot for myself. And it helps me to get even more powerful. So at work, if you are in a situation where you are working for someone else, or even if you have your own company, you can practice this. If you have your own company, there are always meetings with other people. Maybe you have investors, or maybe you have vendors that you work with. There are all kinds of you have a landlord. Maybe there are all kinds of situations where even though you're the boss, you have other people you're working with, and there are questions that you want to ask. So I encourage you to ask those questions and see what happens. And often we qualify those questions. Like, maybe I missed something, or this might be a silly question. And I'm going to challenge you to don't do that. Listen to people around you and how they word their questions and when they use those qualifiers and when they don't. And I guarantee you it sounds way more powerful when somebody doesn't use those qualifiers. So play around with asking questions when you haven't in the past. Another thing is about answering questions or asking a question in a meeting right at the beginning. This is a tip that I often give my coaching clients. Meetings can go by in a work situation and you sort of feel like you haven't spoken. The thing that happens in meetings when people start speaking and you feel like, gosh, I should say something, I should ask the question. And it's hard to jump in after a while. You sort of feel like you're fading into the background. That happened to me more than once. So my tip is ask a question right away or answer a question right away. Because then you're in the mix. You've sort of broken the ice for yourself and you feel like I'm here, I'm present, I'm interacting with people, and make it a business question. I'm not talking about, hey, how was your weekend? Although that doesn't hurt. But get in the mix quick. Just get yourself out there and see how that feels. If you're not used to doing it, it's going to feel uncomfortable. And guess what? That's good for you. That helps to build your power. All right, there's another situation that often comes up in my coaching sessions and in my observations, which has to do with when you're at a conference or you're at a retreat. Often people are scared to ask a question. What I heard someone describe a few weeks ago was, he said, I'm afraid to ask questions in a conference or retreat. I feel my heart beating. I get sweaty palms. I feel nervous about asking a question. The person who was saying this was actually a speaker who often speaks at conferences and retreats. So I was surprised. I shouldn't have been, but I was surprised to hear him say that. Right. I've also heard really powerful CEOs and senior leaders say that they will not ask a question at a conference, like an industry conference or a place where they are amongst their peers, where they feel like there are a lot of people judging them because they don't want to screw it up. They want to ask the perfect question. Ooh, that's a tough one. Look, if you feel that way, and if you can think of circumstances where you should have asked a question, or you could have asked a question, but you didn't, don't worry, you've got another opportunity. There's always another opportunity. And by not asking the question, you're playing small. And when you do ask the question, You're really introducing yourself to people in the room who might not know you and might not know that you're there, even if they do know you. Now, I think we've all seen those people who grandstand and they try to make their own little speech and make it about them. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about asking a legitimate question. And if this is something that you've struggled with, before you go to a conference or a retreat, write down a few potential questions that you want the answers to, you genuinely are curious about. And if those questions are not answered, then you have a question already written and you're prepared in advance. I want you to get to the point where you can do it off the cuff and you can like just ask a question and you're not even really self-conscious about it. But preparing is a great way to get there. Sometimes it takes baby steps to get there. So I encourage you to do that. I had a client who was cautious. No, she didn't ask questions at conferences. And then when she started doing it, people started coming up to her and opportunities arose for her. She established some partnerships and some strong business partnerships because she sort of announced herself to the room by asking a really smart question and not grandstanding and making it about herself. So when can you ask that question that you've been avoiding? And I'll tell you, in that retreat situation, there was a speaker who gave a powerful story. He just shared something so emotional and powerful with this room full of people who were very high performers. And when it got to the Q&A part of the session, nobody asked a question except for me. And I know people had questions. I know they did. But wow, they were self-conscious about asking questions and they didn't do it. And when I asked my question, he answered it and he gave us so much really interesting information that I was really glad I asked the question. So get over yourself and ask that question, because actually another way of looking at this is you're doing a service to the other people in the room that are not asking that question because they're afraid for whatever reason. Beyond work, beyond retreats and conferences, are there situations that arise in your family or in social situations where you want to kind of question what's happening, but you don't? Because you don't want to like stir the waters too much. You don't want to cause too much of an issue. This is where you can practice asking a question in advance. Think about what you want to ask. Think about circumstances that have arisen in the past and will probably arise again. What do you want to ask? What do you want to point out in a kind way? If you do this, you could be making a difference for yourself and for other people. And you're creating more power for yourself, because the more you practice speaking up, the more you can speak up. Lastly, I want to say that this practice of asking questions and of answering questions isn't for everyone, because some people are very comfortable doing this already. And if that's you, then I'm going to challenge you in the opposite way. I'm going to challenge you to stay quiet when you're normally the one speaking up. And if this is what's you're the first person to speak in a meeting, people look to you for the answer. And as I often encourage my leaders in coaching sessions, if people are looking to you for the answer all the time, they're not growing themselves. So I challenge you to stay quiet a little bit more and let them answer questions. Look to other people, literally, physically look at other people. And it kind of gives them permission to answer a question when you would typically be the one doing it.
If you appreciated the insights in this video, subscribe to the channel and you'll be among the first to see new videos when they drop. And if you could take a second to like this video, that small action will be more powerful than you could ever know.